I have two disclaimers here. And I wish Piers was here so I could admonish him. But he came up with this title, and somehow I stuck with it. And everything I know about the flower girls of Salina is in the next slide. The Flower Aviation was the fixed-based operator at Salina Airport, and they provided the fuel at a cost, of course. But when you first arrived, they greeted you like this, which was quite unusual, needless to say. So, thank you very much. Well, actually, maybe I should say a few words about our operation in the cockpit and around the Twin Otter during Fife and Boreas, because it was an enormous experiment for us. 4 years of flying, lots of low flying. And this was our original team back in Fife of '87, 29 years ago. And the three agencies involved in the operation of our National Research Council Twin Otter Flux aircraft, myself, Agriculture Canada with Ray Desjardins, and McGill University with Peter Schwepp, who you probably remember. Now, one of the really unique features about the Twin Otter, right from the start, when we first started measuring fluxes, was the calculation of the actual fluxes in flight. So we could keep an eye after every run. We would know the heat and water vapor and CO2 flux and stuff like that. So we could really keep an eye on things. And that was presented in both the cockpit display as well as the rear station where Peter Schwepp normally flew. And that was really a unique feature. But Ray's talked about the flight patterns, but they were designed to pass as many towers as possible. Like this is the grid flight. There's the old Aston site over there, and this was this agricultural run that we flew on the Roy from Prince Albert to the forested areas. So what did this provide us? It provided us with all sorts of intercomparisons with the towers, because on each flight we're flying by numerous towers several times, so there's actually hundreds of those intercomparisons available. It also had intercomparisons with other Flux aircraft, the NCAR King Air, the University of Wyoming King Air, and you may remember the Long Easy, flown by Tim Crawford, who unfortunately died in that airplane. And then on one flight, and Piers wanted me to give him the video, this is from a videotape that we took from the Twin Otter. He wanted a copy of this, since he lost the one that we gave him, but he'd come up and check up on us occasionally, so, and fly along beside. And, there were some pretty good times. Seafood dinner there up in Fife, some fishing in Boreas. And there was a weekly meeting in Boreas too, where we got to present some preliminary results, which was always good, and other meals. And of course, beautiful scenery. One of the unique flights we did was this dawn flight. We got up about 4 o'clock, took off about 45 minutes before sunrise, and flew that Candle Lake run. And Ray mentioned some of the unique data that came from that. But some beautiful scenes. Now, also, this was all done without, with some risk, flying generally at about 100 to 150 foot altitude over the forests. Now, Peter Schwepp not only flew as scientist in the back, but he was also our resident poet. And on every project we were on, he would write poetry, a lot of it. And I've just got one little section here from describing a low flight. Eyeball to eyeball with the tree flies Aitken John, so low that he is wont to say when crewmen squeal, "That's how I like to spin the wheel." And much desired photo ops are when he shaves the black spruce tops. The camera in Raymond's hands spasmodically scans the land. A flash of otter, blue and white. A hint of a drunken hurtling out of sight. A hint of sky, a blur of tree. That's what you might or might not see. Peter was unable to come here today, but we wish him well in his retirement. One of the unique things that happened to us in Boreas was the biggest gust we ever measured in some 300 and some flux flights with the Twin Otter. The top plot is the north wind component, then the east wind component, and the vertical wind component, which had a a gust of about 13 meters per second up at only 38 meters above the ground. It was quite a surprise. I remember when it happened, there was a bang just like that, and I thought we'd hit a tree, but fortunately not. And what it turned out to be, this is the vector diagram of every 1/32nd of a second, and it was a dust devil basically that we flew through, but you couldn't see it. Sometimes though you could see them if the trees had a lot of pollen coming off them, you could see that. But this was unique, and I remember the pilot said to me, he said, "I'm not going back through there again." Of course, it would have been gone by the second time. Another thing that happened to us is we had a brake fire on takeoff at Prince Albert once. The brake had seized, and we took off, and Chuck in the back shouted out, "Fire, fire!" And Murray did a quick 180 back on the runway, and this is an action shot just after we leapt out of the plane. Chuck out with the fire extinguisher, and of course the next day after new tires and stuff had been put on, we had a little marshmallow roast. fake of course. Well, Flux and Boreas really put us and the Twin Otter on the map. You can see before Fife we flew about 74 local flights basically, and some flights in Manitoba to develop the instrumentation and look at carbon dioxide fluxes. But Fife and Boreas, 141 flights I believe it was almost about 40% of all the flux flights we've flown with the Twin Otter. So it got us invited to some other experiments, the Southern Great Plains, soil moisture, California ozone deposition experiment, and even away up in the Nunavik, Canada. They were really interesting experiments, and this one in particular, I'd like to spend some time discussing it as well, but you know, time is of the essence here. Now you're starting to wonder, is there no other pictures of I don't have any I don't have any other pictures, and it's probably because of the pants. I don't know, but I'm sorry Piers is not here. We really thank you guys for involving us in this experiment. And the great thing about it, how's my time doing?
You're almost there.
Well, there's two things I really remember, but in getting the money for this experiment, myself and some of the Canadian Boreas planners met at Piers's house the night before he was making the presentation to NASA's management. And we left at a house at about midnight or something like that, but Forrest and Piers worked till about 3 o'clock in the morning, and then showed up to pick us up in a van about 8 in the morning, and then Piers gave this amazing talk where I don't know if you remember seeing his talks, but he had 2 slide projectors going all the time, and he got the money for that. And the other thing, of course, is keeping people at it, keeping people at the analysis and presenting papers and special issues and stuff like that, unlike any other experiment that I've ever been involved in. So thank you very much for that.